Brienne sniffed a little as she rubbed her nose, eyes downcast, as she walked through the cluttered streets of Sparktown. The haphazard prefab structures stacked this way and that had been set up hastily as a refugee camp. Just a temporary measure 30 years ago. There were lines of laundry strung up between upper levels. The smells of various cooking, crowded streets, the sounds of sparking electrical work being done from the indie fabs, since that was how most people in Sparktown got money. Doing welding and electrical work that would cost far more in the city due to the safety concerns and health regulations. For Rianne, this was all normal as she walked along the dirt streets, avoiding the puddles here and there. She was clutching her small gray satchel to her chest. It had a small patch on the front, the Polaris star within a triangle, a gift her dad had given her on her 9th birthday almost 2 years ago. He'd saved up for it since he knew how much she dreamed about working for Polaris one day. With the cost of mom's medicine, she knew he could only afford the small satchel instead of the little learner's science kit that she'd told him about, but that was okay. She liked the satchel too. Like so many other people in Sparktown, she wore a jumpsuit that hadn't met specs in the local fabrics factory. The patch from whatever company it was intended for had been pulled off. But it was a light blue and it fit her pretty well, except that the left leg ended too high, exposing the top of her black hiking boots. Her dad had saved up for them since they didn't need to save for mom's medicine anymore. She really liked them, but she hadn't had a chance to go out into the foothills and really try them out. The reason she clutched the satchel to her chest wasn't for fear of thieves, however. Sparktown was filled with people trying to get by, but their crime rate was actually quite low. Possibly because no one around here had anything worth stealing. No, she clutched the satchel to her chest in case she needed to move quickly. She adjusted her glasses and looked around, the smudges partially blurring her vision. The dirt on her palms and mud along her cheeks and forehead told a tale of being shoved into the dirt, not to mention how dirty her jumpsuit was. Her short brownish red hair cut more like a boy's since she didn't want to give them anything long to pull. She was almost at Fountain Square, the only part of Sparktown that had real concrete instead of dirt. It had been built as the start of a real town to house the refugees, but that hadn't gone anywhere. So now, there was a square block of buildings around a fountain that was the one real section of Sparktown that had been built on purpose. She saw the center across the square and moved a little faster. Then she heard Jenny. "Hey, Four Eyes. I thought we told you poor kids weren't welcome here. Not unless they pay my toll." Rianne clutched her bag tighter to her chest and didn't look back. She broke into a jog as she heard Jenny and her group of thugs moving closer before Rianne finally just flat out ran the last 10 yards to the center, the glass doors sliding open smoothly as she approached. Once she was inside, she finally stopped, panting a little as she looked back to see Jenny and the other boys and girls who hung out with her just outside, staring at her. They didn't dare pursue her into the building. "Whatever. Smell ya later, Four Eyes," Jenny said with a sneer as she turned to let her group away. Like most people on Thieves, Jenny's parents had been able to afford even light gene therapy to ensure she didn't have defects, like needing glasses. Rianne's parents had just had enough to make sure she didn't get her mom's disease. That was about it. Finally, Rianne straightened up and looked into the center, seeing Miss Billings behind the counter like usual. She had been looking down at her console when she noticed Rianne approaching. She looked up with a big smile and then immediately frowned and clutched like a mother hen. "Rianne, you're filthy." "Hi, Miss Billings." The somewhat chubby woman got up, walking around the counter as she held a box of clean swipes in a hand. "No, it's okay. Really." Rianne tried, but the woman had nothing of it. She pulled one of the chemical-smelling rags free and began to rub the dirt off Rianne's face as she had to hold her breath and close her eyes while the woman tried to clean her up. "I swear, how do you trip so often? One would think you had 2 left feet." "It's just, there's this step I always miss," Rianne lied. She had never told anyone about Jenny or the others. Dad had enough to worry about. And what could Miss Billings do? She lived in the city. She just liked to work out here and help people. So Rianne sighed and let Miss Billings waste a few of those clean swipes by helping clean her up. When her glasses were pulled free, Rianne just waited until they were done being cleaned and put them on, seeing clearly again, which was the one nice part. There. Rianne knew what came next. Perhaps not quite a show-winning touchhound, but certainly a runner-up. She smiled up at Miss Billings so she wouldn't fuss over her anymore. She just wanted to get into the library. Dad wouldn't be back till tomorrow, so maybe Miss Billings would let her spend the night tonight. The couch in the break room was pretty nice. "Now then, I have a surprise for you today." Rianne looked up at the beaming woman, feeling a little nervous for a moment. She didn't like surprises. So far they had never been good to her. "There's a big sister I would like you to meet." Rianne groaned out at that and felt less nervous. Every so often, Miss Billings would contact the program from the city to try and get someone out here to look after Rianne. But they were just city girls. They were usually well-meaning, but they just didn't get it. "That's okay, Miss Billings, I just want to go to the library." The woman clucked at that and set her hands on her hips. "Young lady, the library isn't just going to vanish one day. Besides, this one is special." She smiled wide and Rianne felt a little nervous once more. Miss Billings had never called one special before. "She's from your favorite little company." Rianne looked down at her satchel before looking up, her eyes going wide. "She is. And she's not human. She's waiting for you in the break room," she said and waved Rianne into the center. Rianne wasn't sure what to say. She felt even more nervous now, but she walked past the welcoming room and down the hall, waving to Mr. Carver in the computer center as she walked past, the white-haired old man smiling and waving back. Then she took a deep breath and rounded the corner to see the break room at the edge of the library. Then she gasped out as she pointed at the big creature standing within, her horns scraping the ceiling. The creature turned to look at Rianne, who was hastily pulling a set of cards out of her satchel. There was no way Dad could afford an IntelliPad, so he had written up a set of cards about her favorite listings from the library to keep. She hastily shuffled through them and then held one up. Diabolus sapien. C, commonly known as Dracarys. Humanoid in appearance, these Xenos were nearly driven to extinction during the Black Swarm. Known for long lifespans and very deliberate movements and actions. The partial exoskeleton they possess protects key organs with dense bone structures that have a craggy rock-like appearance. Their horns are a source of care and pride, but have no known evolutionary significance. Fiercely loyal, many of their survivors serve in the Republic military now. Rianne panted a little as she looked from her card up to the Dracarys in front of her. It was a female, as noted by her curled horns and reddish facial bones. She sort of looked like a human wearing some sort of rock mask, and she was so tall. "You must be Rianne," she said, and that's when Rianne noticed what the woman was wearing. It was a gray jumpsuit, but it had Polaris patches on the shoulders and chest. She saw the pilot piping along the collar, but also scientist stripes along the chest. Rianne stood there, mouth open, as she looked up at the Xeno. After a moment of staring down at her, the Dracarys finally chuckled and leaned down, actually getting onto one knee so she could be face to face with Rianne. "Do you need to touch me to see if I'm real?" Rianne hesitantly reached out, slowly running her hand over the rocky-looking face, feeling the dry bone beneath her fingers. It was different than she'd imagined it. More like aged wood or perhaps rugged paper. Then the Dracarys stood back up, towering over Rianne. "Satisfied I'm real?" Rianne nodded. Then the Dracarys reached down with a long hand, backs of her palms and fingers coated in that same bone material. "My name is Vera." Rianne gingerly reached up to shake that massive hand, finding hers easily dwarfed by it. "I heard you haven't really connected with the big sisters before." "Well, you're my first little sister, and I hope we hit it off. Let me know how I'm doing, by the way." Rianne stared up at her for another several seconds before she finally found her voice again. "Hi." The Dracarys laughed at that, her voice deep and rich, comforting. Rianne immediately thought of cuddling up with her dad in front of the heater for some reason. "Hello. Should I repeat everything I've said?" "You look a little starstruck." Rianne gulped and pointed up. "You work for Polaris." "Yes, I do." "I heard you were a fan. I see your satchel." She pointed as Rianne looked down. "It's just a little one. I've been trying to piece together my own science kit, but it's not easy." Vera nodded at that and then leaned down, setting her hands on her knees. "Well, why don't we see what we can do with what you have? I see you have hiking boots on. Want to go up into the foothills?" Rianne looked up and then nodded. "Well, come on then." Vera straightened up and started walking to the stairwell at the back of the break room. Rianne stood still, frowning for a moment. "The door's this way." "I know. But my flyer is on the roof." Rianne gasped out at that. "You have a flyer?" She rushed past the Xeno woman and up the staircase, panting a little, as she charged up 3 flights of stairs as fast as she could. But when she pushed the door open to the roof, she knew it was worth it. There in front of her was a black and gold flyer with more Polaris markings on it. It looked like a giant dragonfly from back on Earth. When Vera caught up a few seconds later, she stayed behind Rianne, letting her enjoy the sight. "So, you like flyers?" "Well, I've never been so close to one. But I see them flying overhead sometimes. And over the city, a lot." She was just staring at it until Vera walked by, opening the hatch as she waved her over. Rianne approached slowly, feeling like she might just wake up and be on the couch in the break room. But instead, Vera picked her up, setting her down in the co-pilot seat, strapping her in as Rianne looked around. All the buttons and panels and screens. "Wow," she whispered, unable to think of anything else to say. In the meantime, Vera walked around and climbed into the pilot seat, starting up the machine, as Rianne couldn't help but let out a little squeal of excitement. To be in a flyer. "Okay, these things jump pretty hard, so be ready." Rianne nodded. "Are you ready?" She nodded again. "I can't hear you." Yes, I'm ready." She clutched her satchel as Vera smiled and then engaged. The strong legs shoved down, making the craft jump up into the air as Rianne was pressed down into her seat. Then the engine engaged and it shot off as she gasped. After a moment, she began to laugh, watching everything zip past beneath them. She could see the city very clearly now. All those white towers with their smooth faces. The green gardens lining all the streets. The bridges that crossed the lake to separate Sparktown from the city. She could even see the mag rail snaking out of the city. Her face was pressed to the side of the cockpit as Vera laughed. "How's this for a big sister trip, huh?" "Oh my god, we're going so fast, this is incredible, it's all so cool." Rianne burst out in a single breathless collection of words before having to gasp for a moment. "Wait. You said we were going to the foothills." "I didn't say which foothills." Rianne looked back out as they flew past the city and she looked forward, gasping once more. On some very clear days, like just after a storm, if she stood on the roof of the center, she could see the tip of it, but now, she was looking at Mount Ral directly. It was huge. "This is so cool." Rianne gasped out with another surprised laugh. Never would she have guessed her day would turn out like this. Vera let them fly lower, letting Rianne see the herds of fluffy Burmers being kept under control by well-trained touch hounds. There were fields of sunflowers, purple thorns, and even some red lilies, all laid out around them. Soon, Vera brought the flyer in low and slow to land it on top of one of the hills near a small stream that was surrounded by wildflowers. Rianne tried to unhook her harness, but was struggling with it as Vera laughed and reached over to unfasten it for her. Once Rianne was free, she opened the cockpit door and nearly fell out of the machine as she jumped to the ground, stumbling forward before breaking into a run. She moved down the hill to the stream, looking at all the flowers as she pulled a small jar from her satchel. She couldn't afford even small grow jars, so they were just normal jars with some dirt in the bottom. She sniffed the red lilies and sneezed for some reason. But that didn't stop her from carefully digging up the roots with her hands and tucking it into the dirt of the first jar. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.